Sergeant Grays.
We were making good time through the vent system, not even running into any maintenance drones as we went through the surprisingly clean air vents. No one dared to say anything for fear of breaking the streak of good luck that we seemed to be having. As we jogged along, I couldn't help but think to myself how well this whole thing was going for us. After 20 minutes of jogging, I decided to check in on Team B. "Team B, what's your status?" I radioed over. "Everything is going as planned, Sarge. Our current ETA is, 5 minutes," came the reply. "Copy, Team B, keep me posted," I said as I jogged up to meet up with my team, who was resting at an intersection of the vent system. "Damn, Sarge, how do you think they keep this place as clean as they do? These look nothing like the air vents on our ships." "Way to clean, you know," said one Marine. "Yeah, I know, right? They must not shed dead skin or something like we do. Or maybe they have top-notch cleaning drones," said another. I looked around. There was no sign of any dust in these cavernous vents. It doesn't matter what kind of methods they use to clean their vents, but if you're so eager to find out, then why don't you go and ask them private? Remember, we still have a job to do, and I'll be damned if we don't finish it. I turned to our navigator, who was looking at the holomap he had out. "What's our ETA to the sensor suite?" He looked up from the map that he was poring over. "We should be there in another 20 minutes or so, Sarge." I nodded. "Well, if we're done chit-chatting, then I suggest we keep moving." After some rather enthusiastic responses from my Marines, we started jogging again. It wasn't long before I got a radio message from Team B. "We got to the early warning system and are planting the explosives now," came the message. "Copy that. As soon as you get to minimum safe distance, hold the detonation until we get ours up for a simultaneous detonation of both systems," I said. "You got it, Sarge," the Marine replied. "Everything is going to plan. Why do I feel like we were about to get a shit sandwich served up fresh soon?" I thought. As we continued to jog, I couldn't help but let my thoughts get wrapped up into the what-if scenarios that they constantly trained us for. I was finally shaken out of my thoughts by my radio operator, Collins. He sounded on the verge of panic. "Sarge, the Indomitable Crusade is getting its new orders from Yalayan High Command. This entire fleet group is going to hit the Strength through Diplomacy and her escorts, and they're prepping for the jump and are leaving in 30 minutes. I paused to think about our options. Either we continue with the mission and hope that we have enough time before their ship jumps for the boarding parties to arrive, or we use the explosives that were meant for the sensor systems to disable the engines so there would be one less ship in that fight. Damned if we do. Damned if we don't. "What are we gonna do, Sarge?" asked a Marine who hadn't spoken up before. "I mean, some of us have family on that ship." He was right. The Strength through Diplomacy was one of the largest non-combat ships that humanity had ever constructed, with it being well over 20 kilometers long. Sure, it was staffed by security and embassy employees, but that didn't change the fact that the ship was basically a moving city, complete with the families of those workers. If we didn't do anything, then there would be untold civilian casualties, all in the first day of our first interstellar war. I pointed at Collins. "Get a message out to the Strength through Diplomacy through the QE network. Let them know what's coming." The Quantum Entangled Communications Network was only formed recently, after studying some of the tech that our galactic neighbors had given us. It had very limited use in life on Terra, but it was vital in communications with the various fleets that humanity had in the galaxy. The thing that made it so neat was the fact that it was theoretically untraceable, perfect for covert operations like this. They can handle the possibility of that. As for us, we have a job to do, so let's double time it, Marines. After a round of acknowledgments from the team, we started forward again. We got to another intersection when suddenly, a scraping noise came from behind us. We all trained our guns on the sound only to see the vent behind us close with a hiss. Before we could react, all the other escape routes we could have used closed around us with a hiss. I was wondering when the shit would hit the fan. I thought to myself with little mirth.
High Commander Tussis.
There had to be something on this ship. There had to be. There were no vermin on the ship, and no crew member in their right mind would cut a hole in the hull and bend back an access panel. It had to be the Terrans. There is no other explanation. "High Commander, we have found nothing in the vent system," came the word of my chief engineer. Then check again. There has to be something, I shouted, paranoia eating away at me. High Commander, we have already scanned the entire vent system 4 times already. If there is anything in them, we would know about it by now. Then scan the entire ship, or I will find someone else to be my chief engineer. They're here somewhere, I shouted once more. At your command, High Commander, replied the engineer, swallowing audibly. He bowed his head and began the scan. As that was happening, the communications officer ran up to my seat and bowed deferentially. High Commander, we have received our targets for the war against the Terrans. The officer handed me a pad with the message on it. I looked down at the pad. It showed our target was the Terran embassy ship, known as the Strength Through Diplomacy, and her escorts. A fine first conquest for this glorious war. Good. I turned to the navigation station. Set a course for the Alpha Centauri system. We will deal a crippling blow to the Terrans this day. I then turned to the communications officer. Send a message to the fleet. We jump in 30 minutes. At your command, High Commander, came the response from both stations. The chief engineer suddenly perked his head up and turned to me. High Commander, we weren't able to find anything in the vents, but we did discover a small, unidentified object in the housing of the early warning system. I turned to the security station, clicking my mandibles in a self-satisfactory way. Send a security team down to the early warning system immediately, I shouted to the security station. I was beside myself with vindication. I was right. How they managed to get on board without us noticing was an issue for when we captured one of those sneaky vermin. And for you, I turned back to the engineer, who was looking more than a bit sheepish considering the new information. Shut down the entire vent system. If any of those vents open, I want to hear about it immediately. Start sweeping them one at a time. If there are Terrans in those vents, then I want to know about it, and try to take them alive. At your command, High Commander, came the response from the bridge crew around me. I clicked my mandibles in vindication again. I was right, and those Terrans will rue the day that they decided to step onto my ship.
Sergeant Grays.
We were trapped. There was no way out of the intersection that we found ourselves in. What are we going to do, Sarge? We're trapped, asked one of the Marines. We couldn't risk cutting through the doors because they would know exactly where we were. We couldn't wait for some Xenos to find us for the same reason. We could try hacking their systems, but that would certainly set off at least some alarms, stuck between a rock and a hard place. Thank God that's where us Marines excel. Team B, do you copy? I asked into my radio. We copy, Sarge, came the reply. Are you at minimum safe distance yet? I asked. We are, Sarge, replied the Marine. Detonate your package and meet us at the sensor suite. They know we're here, and I think our little gift will be more than enough of a distraction for them to not worry for us for a bit. Copy, ready to detonate, said the Marine excitedly. Confirmed, detonate, I said with a smile on my face. It was only a moment later when I heard and felt an explosion rock the ship. I smiled and nodded at the successful detonation of Team B's tactical nuke. Humanity didn't really have very much use for them since we found out that aliens existed and world peace was established, more or less, so it was nice to be able to use them every once in a while. I looked over at my Marines and it was clear that they felt the same way, some even going so far as to say things like, "Hell yeah," and "Come get some, you alien bastards." Stow that shit, Marines, we're not out of the woods yet. Hopefully they will be too busy dealing with the radioactive fallout to worry about us. I pointed to the 2 Marines still carrying their plasma cutters. You 2 start making holes to get us to the sensor suite. They immediately got to work. I then pointed to Collins, my radio operator and overall tech whiz. You see if you can't get into their systems and start wreaking havoc. He gave a sinister smile and cracked his knuckles. Thought you'd never ask, Sarge. I nodded and got back on my radio. Team B, confirmed detonation. Also, what's your status? A moment of silence came across the radio, spiking my paranoia before they finally responded. We're fine over here, Sarge, just trapped in the vents is all. Damn, they got this place locked up tighter than Fort Knox. A bit of mirth creeped into the Marine's voice. And if you need me to confirm the detonation, then you must be deaf and blind, Sarge. He quickly realized who he was talking to, and quickly regained his professional demeanor. Detonation confirmed. No confirmed kills at this time. Good, I said. Start making your way over to the central computer systems to draw them away from us. And if you get killed, make sure to take out as many as you can." "That we can do, Sarge," came the enthusiastic reply. I turned back to my squad, everyone in various stages of panic. Despite not being able to see their faces, I could tell that they were all terrified, either of dying, being captured and subsequently tortured, or even just failing their mission. "Listen up, Marines." The ones that weren't doing anything looked at me. "We are going to finish this mission or die trying. And if the Corps has taught us anything, it's that Marines don't die easily." I turned to the Marines, cutting a hole in the bulkhead. "What's the ETA of that hole?" 2 minutes, Sarge. With how thick it is, I would say it's going to take us about 5 minutes per bulkhead." I nodded. "And how many bulkheads do we have to go through?" I asked our navigator. "We have 30 of them to go through, so about 2.5 hours, not including travel time between the bulkheads." "Shit!" I shouted. "Chances are we'll be found out by then." I started to resign myself to having to actually fight these massive Xenos without the support of mechs, instead of the stealth that we had employed thus far. "God damn, I'm a fucking genius!" Collins suddenly shouted, as he quickly strode over to me, wildly waving the tablet around before finally handing it to me. I took the tablet and looked at it. On it was lines and lines of code that were as unintelligible as the alien writing on the side of these air ducts. "Collins," I started, "what the hell am I looking at?" He quickly took the tablet back, excitement evident in his demeanor and body language. "It took me a couple of minutes, but I was finally able to get into the Yalean's network. I've got the detection system in the vents suppressed right now, but with a couple more minutes of coding, and I can probably send them false signals. Those dumb bastards need to update their cybersecurity measures if it was that easy for me to get in." I nodded. Finally, some good news. "All right. Continue to run interference and get this code to Team B so they can start wreaking havoc while we achieve our objectives." I looked over to where the 2 Marines were finished cutting a hole in the bulkhead. "We have 30 more bulkheads to get through before we get to the sensor suite, so let's get moving."
High Commander Tussis.
All vent access points and internal crossroads hatches have successfully sealed, High Commander, came the word from my chief engineer. I leaned back in my chair and reveled in this small victory. We have them contained for now. When we find them, it'll be like shooting fish in a barrel. I could imagine myself, after destroying the Terrans on board and taking the fight to the strength through diplomacy, receiving all the medals that were available to me. I could already feel the praise of those around me, along with a possible seat on the High Command itself. Unfortunately for me, I could not revel in the future victory for very long before an explosion rocked the ship, and I had to grasp my chair tightly to not faceplant into the floor. "Engineer, what in the name of all the holy ancestors just happened?" I shouted. The engineer looked as if he was about to pass out. "To the entire early warning system and all of the surrounding rooms. They're gone, High Commander." "Gone? What do you mean, gone? No traditional explosive that small could possibly do that much damage. Perhaps the diagnostic information is incorrect," I rebutted. It wasn't traditional explosives. It was a fission bomb." Everyone on the bridge suddenly looked a lot like the engineer, and I realized why the engineer was so close to passing out. Fission weapons were almost outright banned by the galactic community, and for good reason, too. Even with the advanced medicine that we had, if radiation poisoning wasn't treated immediately after exposure, for most species, it was deadly. We had to contain this before any more of the crew that wasn't caught in the original blast died from the fallout of this attack. "Lock down that entire part of the ship. Make sure that the surrounding areas don't get saturated." I silently cursed myself for not maintaining composure as much as I should. I looked over to the engineer to see that he was already doing that. The moment that I get my hands on those Terrans, I will make sure their suffering is legendary. I sat there for a moment. This will also set back our timeline of attacking the Terrans. I cursed once more. Several hours of metaphorical and literal firefighting after the initial explosion, we had finally managed to get that part of the ship under control. I breathed a sigh of relief as I finally was able to relax after everything that had happened. The early warning system would be sorely missed, but so long as the sensor suite stayed online, We would be more than capable to destroy any pitiful resistance that the Terrans could muster up. Now to find those damned apes. Not even 20 seconds after thinking that, a second explosion rocked the entire ship.
Major Morrow.
It was time. Our shuttle had been cloaked and waiting just outside of the effective scanners and weapons of the indomitable crusade. Everyone was waiting patiently for the go-ahead by command to start our boarding action on the Elean ship. The mood was so intense that no one even dared to speak. And how would they? This was possibly the single most important military operation in humanity's history since first contact. And after intercepting that communication from the Elean High Command, everyone knew the stakes, and failure wasn't an option anymore. We would succeed or die trying. The voice of our CO came through our helmet radios.
Phase 1 has been completed. Prepare for Phase 2 ETA 5 minutes.
I suddenly stood up, prompting the 20 other soldiers in the shuttle with me to stand as well. I turned to face them all, looking intensely at the faceplates of their mechs. Today, we don't fight for politics, resources, or any other pathetic and short-sighted reasons. We fight for the continuation of our species. It is estimated that there are over 3,000 Yaleans on that ship, and only 20 of us. That almost makes it an even fight. I paused for dramatic effect. For them,